parents, students, and teachers. I'm Katie Ridley. I'm a member of the State Board of Education. Today we will be discussing the opposing views regarding standardized testing. During the panel, I ask that you have your cell phones turned off and that you hold your questions until the Q&A period after the panel. Each panelist will be given 2 questions and they'll have about 1.5 minutes to respond. Let me introduce our panelists. Right next to me we have Lauren Warner, who is a member of the U.S. Board of Education. Next to her we have Elizabeth Gonzalez, a former public and private school student. And then we have Marissa Anzalotti, a professor at the local university. And we have Melissa Trevino on the end, a standardized testing advocate. Let's begin with our first question. Lauren, what is your stance regarding standardized testing and why?
Hi, I'm Lauren Warner and I am a member of the U.S. Board of Education. And I am pro standardized testing because it is the best way to judge students' proficiency in the subject. According to Norman Augustine, the best way to maximize something is to first measure it. So if a test can accurately judge a student's mastery of a subject, then tests can be used to get a general idea about the direction in which these students are headed, and the only way to see if our schools are actually getting better. According to the Huffington Post, just 6% of U.S. students performed at the advanced level on a test administered in 56 countries. This proves that our schools are definitely not as well or in the right direction as other schools in other countries. And so without standardized tests, we wouldn't actually have any grasp at where these students stood compared to students around the world.
Thank you. Elizabeth, what is your stance regarding standardized testing and why?
I'm Elizabeth Gonzalez, and I have been in both public and private school settings, so I've seen both sides of having standardized tests and not having standardized tests, and I'm against them. As a public school student, I have seen that teachers teach to the test and they don't teach to educate, which I got to experience in private school. And Columbia University supports that statement, with teachers teaching just to pass the test rather than to educate the rest of the students.
Thank you. Marissa, what is your stance regarding standardized testing and why?
I'm Marissa Anzalotti, a high school professor, and I'm against the use of standardized tests. I'm against it because no 2 students are the same, and each education they receive is different. Critic Alfie Cohn complains that some test questions actually require out-of-school knowledge that privileged students may have only learned. So, or where a student comes from could affect the results. For example, Christopher Berglund from Psychology Today says that students of higher socioeconomic rankings have an advantage over other students because wealthier backgrounds, they attend schools that receive more funding, and they're able to hire tutors and pay for extra materials. And people who come from lower income families, they lack resources, qualified teachers, and may not get the same preparation for these tests.
Thank you. Melissa, what is your stance regarding standardized testing and why?
Hello, I'm Melissa Trevino, and I am a standardized testing advocate, and I stand for standardized testing. The reason why I do so is because standardized testing offers objectivity. According to Derek Hodges, standardized testing is an excellent objective indicator of how well students are performing. These tests are designed to measure how well students have been learning about the necessary skills to meet the academic state standards. In this regard, the standardized tests are incredibly effective because they are written, administered, and scored in the same way regardless the student, the school, or the district, and they give a clear picture of how well schools are meeting the educational standards.
Thank you. All right, moving on to our second question. Lauren, what is the general minority sentiment regarding standardized testing?
Well, definitely it is not arguable that minority students have a disadvantage at standardized tests, but we found that standardized tests are generally more accepted by minorities. In a study by PDK, they found minorities actually supported standardized tests more than white people. And minority students were found to opt out of tests less than white people do. This suggests that minority parents want proof that their schools are getting better instead of just accepting assurances from schools and teachers. Many minority students are in like underprivileged areas and in poverty. So like they want proof that from these scores of standardized tests that their schools are actually getting better instead of just being fed this from teachers and schools.
Thank you.
And this is why I am pro standardized testing.
Thank you. Elizabeth, what is another reason to consider your stance regarding standardized testing?
Like I said, schools teach to pass the test rather than teach to educate, and going off of that, according to Education Weekly, the scores that the children make on these tests determine teachers' salary raises and the rankings of the schools that they're attending. So they're riding on those high test scores so teachers get paid more and so their school can look better. And so I see the standardized test as benefiting the schools more than benefiting their students, and this is why I'm against standardized testing.
Thank you. Marissa, what is another reason to consider your stance regarding standardized testing?
Well, adding to what I was saying earlier, no student is the same, and although they give everyone the same test, they treat everyone as if they're identical. And a study from the Annie Casey Foundation found that there actually is a large gap between white students versus children of other races. And the American Institute for Learning says that this test doesn't value diversity. There's language barriers, different learning and thinking styles, and different cultural backgrounds. So, and also some people are even just better test takers than others. Each child has different factors that could result or affect their scores, so this makes that test not fair and cannot accurately determine someone's performance, and that is why I'm against standardized testing.
Thank you. Melissa, what is another reason to consider your stance regarding standardized testing?
Another reason why I support standardized testing is because it holds schools and teachers accountable for what they teach. According to Monty-Neal, the nation still needs rational and effective approaches to school improvement. And as I stated earlier, standardized testing offers a clear picture of how well schools are doing in regards to educational standards. In addition to this, Patricia Nobel states that standardized testing makes schools and teachers obligates schools and teachers to take a clear picture, to take a clear look at how to develop curricular maps in order to make sure that we are teaching the students the correct material. And this is good because not only because we're making sure that the students are being taught the correct topics, but also to make sure that they are that these topics fit in to the students' grade level and also to the subjects that they're being taught. And this is why I support a standardized testing.
Thank you. So we have heard from both sides. Lauren is for standardized testing because it's the best way to measure student performance. Melissa is also for standardized testing because it's a way to obtain objective information on school and student performance. Elizabeth was against standardized testing because it promotes teaching to the test. Marissa was also against standardized testing because it's an unfair way to judge students. I would like to thank our panelists for coming to speak, and I want to thank our audience for listening. I'll open up for any questions. Yes.
What is the alternative to standardized testing if we get rid of it?
I'm going to direct this question to Marissa. What is the alternative to standardized testing?
They're looking into portfolio-based assessments where they gather students' work over time, and it's more creative and engaging the students more, so it's not just multiple choice and short answer questions.
Why can't we use school grades to measure students' performance?
I'm going to direct this question to Melissa. Why can't we use school grades to measure performance?
So according to an article written by Aaron Churchill, there's different teacher grading practices across schools. So we're talking about students and fairness. So let's say there's a student that got a B on science because he had a really tough grading teacher, and we compare his grades to another student who was taking the same class but got an A because his teacher didn't care about the class and will give A's to all the students. So it will be unfair to compare the student grades based without knowledge about the background knowledge of the classes.
My question is for Elizabeth. I know that you said that certain scores on standardized testing could lead to teachers getting paid more, and yet you're against standardized testing. Are you against teachers getting paid more?
So the question is, if standardized test scores raise the salaries of teachers, and you're against standardized testing, are you also against raising teacher salaries?
I'm not against raising teacher salaries. I'm against that focus being put onto the students instead of teaching these kids to learn about the world and becoming a more educated individual. They're just learning to pass this test in order for the teachers to get paid more. So, I mean, I wish the two could be separate. I do agree that teachers should be paid more, but I don't think the kids' performance on a certain test should be the reason why the teachers should be paid more.
Yes.
I guess this is anyone on the panel. What do you think about, since teachers have this, big incentives for kids to do well on standardized tests, even to the point of employment or not? What do you have to say about teachers, getting desperate and this becoming such a big burden on them that they start cutting corners? There's been a lot of cheating scandals lately on these standardized tests. What do you have to say to those kind of things?
I think this could also be directed.
I mean, I don't care who answers that.
Okay, Lauren, if you want to take this question, regarding the pressure put on teachers, how do you think that should be handled with standardized testing?
It was actually interesting, as I was doing my research for this, they actually found that teachers, the tests that, the scores students get on tests reflect, nothing really from actually, the teachers teaching as much as it's just how the students learn. Does that make any sense? They did, the scores aren't completely reflective of the teachers, how well the teacher teaches. Does it make any sense? Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
But they also they were saying also in it that teachers, if they are willing to do this smudge scores and stuff, then that says it's not a good teacher wouldn't do that. Does that make any sense? It's more reflective of their character than actually stress from trying to reach these good scores or whatever.
This can be directed towards anyone. I was just wondering, so if you guys say grades are subjective and the test scores are subjective as well, what kind of things would go into a portfolio if they were going to examine a student? Because if you guys are saying grades are teachers can grade differently on different spectrums or whatever, then how can you take that into account when looking into a portfolio? That just kind of confuses me.
So this question will be directed at Marissa. If grades are subjective, how do you use a portfolio to objectively rate students?
Well, it said, when I read about articles, it said there could be individual surveys, but the tests aren't fair because some students take this test different, stress and all other stuff. But the portfolios, I'm not really sure how the grading would be specifically, but I think it would be an overall grading of the student's performance and
a holistic view.
yeah, or it's supposed to be more creative because tests are just short answer questions. And then to grade the teachers, they would see how the teachers instructed them to create the portfolios.
Okay, that's all I was wondering.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, I think, any more questions? All right, well, that concludes our panel. Thank you very much for coming.